So as I'm doing a brief overview of each collage technique, what I would do is with pencil, I would just write little notes next to each of these things so that you know what to do. So for the gradient, you're going to be going from one color to either one more color or a number of colors. So I went from red violet to pink to salmon to orange. I think the wider spread that you have of colors, the easier it is to execute your project, and you're going to be using small squares and rectangles to make this nice painted with paper look. The next technique you're going to learn about is mosaic, is when you use some sort of a repeated shape, leaving spaces between to resemble a real mosaic. Traditionally, mosaics are made out of glass. The next technique you're going to learn is how to use collage paper to make an animal or an object. Here I did a peacock head, and I also did a peacock feather. This is kind of an idea. Some of you guys might have done something like this in elementary school, where the parts of the animal you kind of cut from paper and make into a whole piece. And then the last technique is called surreal, is when you put two or more things together that sort of don't make sense. So this little artist is holding a humongous palette knife, and this fun skeleton, you know, he just is a little sassy, a little tiger face, little pet, and he plays the tuba. So, you know, just crazy things. So before you go searching for your papers that you're going to use, you need to know what colors you're going to search for. So what I like to do is, besides my techniques, I'm going to decide what I'm going to do. So for my gradient, I'm going to go from yellow to green to teal to blue. And those are going to be the 4 colors that I search for in my magazine. For mosaic, I'm just going to stick with one color, I think probably a blue. And then for my animal and object, I think I'll do something simple, like a pear or an apple, maybe something not quite as complicated as a peacock. So I'm going to put fruit colors there. And then for surreal, I personally like to do things that are like very big things with very small things. You can do very unrealistic things with realistic things, but basically the idea of surreal is like two things are coming together that in the real world really wouldn't make sense. So I'm just going to look for things that are opposite and kind of get inspired as I'm looking through my magazine. When you're looking through your magazine, you are going to want to just kind of chunk things out. So I know that I need green. So instead of like taking the time to perfectly cut it, I'm just going to cut it out like this and kind of set it to the side. This page is full of a lot of good swatches, as we say. So I'm just going to do a big fat tear. And then I'm going to just individually rough cut all of, you know, these colors out, because these would be perfect for things like my gradient. Art supply books are really good to use if you want like a lot of different colors. So due to movie magic, watch this. Look at all these amazing things. So you guys can just make piles of these at your seats. We'll also have some envelopes out for you too, but I have my purples, I have my blues, I have my greens, I have my yellows, all the things that I need. And then I also have some odd things in here for some of my surreal art. I have like a little class, I have skeletons, I have all different types of things in here. So now that I've kind of collected my materials, I'm actually ready to learn the techniques. All right, for my first technique called the gradient, when we basically we gradiate from one color to the next, you're gonna make sure that you have a combination of small squares and rectangles. I recommend making them about the size of your thumbnail. This will allow you to like overlap the different things as you go. Now, in order to get ready for that, I have to actually cut my things into that shape. So this is obviously not a square, not a rectangle. It's kind of like a trapezoid. So I'm going to make it into a square first. And then what's nice is I can make it into more squares. And I'm just going to kind of use the bottom of my paper since nothing's on it right now. I could also use the side of my table to get all of my square shapes ready of my yellow, green, teal, and blue. And let's do a little movie magic to speed this up. Woo, beautiful. So I just kind of have my spectrum laid out here. You guys also notice I'm kind of starting a trash pile. Please try and stay neat and tidy as you're working. Now, but before I show you how to adhere these pieces to your paper, I want to just briefly show you guys how I would go about doing this, and this is without some glue. So you don't want at the end any of the white space of the paper showing. You want it to just be about the magazines. So instead of trying to make the papers match up perfectly, that would take you forever. We would like you to overlap your pieces. So one piece goes on top of another piece and another piece, sort of almost like you're weaving the different pieces together. And this is also where you can kind of start to play around with your blend. And if you have a little bit too much green showing, you can hide it behind, you know, a little bit of yellow, and you can see that that blends a little bit better. So allow yourself to be flexible and allow yourself to play around with the color as you're working on your blends. Now, there are 3 ways that you can adhere your collage pieces together, and it's really based off of your personal preference. The first one is just using a simple glue stick. I think that this is extremely easy. It allows you to work quickly. It dries really quickly too, so you guys can use glue sticks. You can use wet glue. Wet glue is a little bit messier, but it really has the best adhesion. Glue all especially sticks really well. And then the last technique that you can use is you can use Mod Podge. In order to use the Mod Podge, you must use a brush, and you must use brushes that are specifically for Mod Podge. Brushes that have a little bit more wear and tear on them. When you use the Mod Podge, you just put a little dollop of it on a paper towel and on a tray, and then you just use a little bit at the time using the tip of your brush. So when I'm using something like the glue stick, I would do about 2 inches of an area, and then just kind of keep my glue stick handy because I might need to make additions as I go. The nice thing about the glue stick is when you get a little bit of glue on your hands, it's really easy to pick up your next piece and to put it down. It's okay if you guys don't exactly stay in the edges that are here. So I'm going to start to overlap here. So that's where I want to put a little bit of glue over my yellow pieces that I already have, so that I actually make sure the entire thing is adhered. So wherever you're going to be putting something, make sure that there's glue on it so that you don't have things that start to like fly up and things like that. Now, when it comes to something like using the glue all, you can do the dot is a lot method. You can use your fingers to smear it, but you just need little teeny, I mean, these are like minuscule, guys. Little teeny tiny dots, and you can place it down. I feel like with the collage, with the grading collage, it might not be the best technique, but I know some people prefer using wet glue. If you're ever working in your journal and you have something that is super thick, this is a great method to use. And probably me and Mrs. Cantrell's most favorite technique is using the Mod Podge technique. So with the Mod Podge, you're basically making a glue sandwich. You're putting glue down, you're putting your paper down, you're putting glue on top of it. It really makes sure that all edges are nice and covered. So I'm just gonna lay this Mod Podge down, pick up my next piece, and then I Mod Podge on top too. And that kind of gives me a really nice coating. Oh, I can't pick my paper up. But you can kind of see that it makes it a little shiny. See that? And then that's going to be a protective film that's over your whole thing. So I'm going to continue to use the Mod Podge. I like it. It works really quickly as I finish up this gradient collage. Look at that. Gorgeousness, gorgeousness. So I'm going to actually resort these into their piles because I could possibly use it for my next technique. Actually, I'm just going to keep the blues out because the next color I'm going to use is the blue. So the next technique that we're going to do is a mosaic. So mosaic, I'm sure you guys have seen them before, but mosaic traditionally is used in glass, and little pieces of glass are put together to make an overall image. We're just going to go with the mosaic look. Some of you guys know it as the like terrazzo look, where bits of colored plaster are inside of stone. That's great. I highly recommend using the triangle as your mosaic shape. You can use other things like circles or octagons. Octagons and hexagons actually end up kind of looking like a bee's nest, or not, that's not the right word. Guys, what's the right word? Honeycomb. A honeycomb, but it really just depends. I really like triangles though, because they're really quick, and if you cut a square or cut a rectangle, you can just keep making smaller triangles out of it that can fit your certain space. The key to a mosaic though is to leave little tiny slivers of white space between your spaces. You can choose one color like I'm doing, or you can choose multiple colors. The benefit of choosing one color is you can choose a lot of different shades of it, and it ends up looking really cool, but it really is totally up to you guys. So what I first recommend doing is cutting your shapes, a ton of your shapes. So for me, that's going to be a ton of triangles. I'll kind of lay them out down here so that I can get an idea of how many I have. You definitely want to make sure that you have enough to fill up the space. Also try and make a variety of whatever shape you're making. Make small ones, make mediums, make big ones. Also make like narrow ones, make thick ones, whatever type of style you want. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. If you do triangles, like I mentioned, the easiest thing is to cut your shape into a rectangle or square, whatever your preference is, and always keep that trash pile to the side. Then cut from corner to corner, and then what's great about this is if I continue to make sure I'm cutting on a corner, I've just made more triangles. And then if I cut into a corner, I've made more triangles. So I have some obtuse ones, I have some acute ones. Yeah, I have all the triangles. So I'm just gonna go cut a bunch of triangles with different blues. Ooh. Boom! Triangles, baby! So I have such a huge variety here. I'm going to kind of just mix them up so that my eyes see them as different too. I personally think when you're doing the mosaic that the glue stick is the easiest to use, but if you want that nice film that goes over it, then I would use the Mod Podge technique. The Mod Podge does really help to get all of those corners down that might be sharp corners. So just like I said before, I'm only going to do about like a 2-inch section at a time, putting on a liberal amount of the glue stick. Make sure it's covered when you're not using it. And then I actually purposely get my finger a little bit wet, and I'm going to start placing my triangles. And with a clean finger, I'm just making sure to kind of pat down those little corners so they stay down. Now when I'm doing my next one, I want to make sure to leave a little bit of space between what I just put down to give it that true mosaic or terrazzo look. Oh, a little one got in there. That's okay. So while the glue is still wet, I'm just kind of moving it around, matching up angles. So it sort of just becomes like a fun little puzzle that you can do all throughout it. So we want the whole entire thing filled up. Also, feel free that when you're making this mosaic, if you realize like, oh, hey, I really need something that's really skinny right there, go ahead and make a triangle, cut things that you've already cut to make sure that it will fit there. And I went off the page a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna ta-da! My mosaic is done. All right, for the next one, you need to decide what animal or object you're going to try and portray through collage. So there's no coloring with this, No painting with this. You are using just magazine, cut up magazine, cut up in particular ways to represent an image. If you want to keep it simple, I recommend doing something that you would normally see in a still life, something like an apple or a pear, a banana. It also is easier if you choose something that's one color so that you can see the complexities in it. So this apple isn't just a red apple. When the shadow comes down here, we see a burgundy color. We might see a little bit of brown in here. At the top, we see that nice yellow color here, a spot of white. If it is really difficult for you to see the colors that are in here, you're like, it's an apple, it's red, duh, Miss Braun, what's going on? Something that can help you is if you look up painted before whatever you're looking up. So if I search for a painted apple, I get something that's a little bit more expressive, that's broken down with colors a little bit more. We have these nice kind of very red colors, these scarlet colors. Might be easier for you guys to look at something painted because it's similar to what we're doing with collage. Mrs. Cantrell always calls it painting with the paper. So I highly recommend finding whatever image source that you want to use. I'm going to be using an apple, and you can have that on your Chromebook set to the side. Now, something you can do for your object, and you can do more than one if you like to, like how I did the peacock and I did the peacock feather. You can very lightly sketch out whatever you are drawing. So I'm just going to quickly sketch out my apple. All right, once you have your object sketch, you're going to want to start to gather your pieces of magazine. So when I'm doing the study of my apple and I'm seeing those particular colors, I want to make sure to grab some pinks, some whites, some yellowish orangish, some green for here, some lime green in here. When you're grabbing those colors, what I recommend doing is kind of creating a swatch station down here, very similar to what we did with the gradient collages. I recommend taking your big pieces, so like here's a nice red orange. Obviously this is like almost as big as the apple. Please don't do that. You need to use little pieces of collage to make the image. I would say probably around the size of your pinky is what you're going to be going for, so that you have a lot of little pieces of magazine clippings that make this object painted. So I'm going to take this color that I know I'm going to use in the highlighted areas, and I'm going to cut it into smaller swatch sizes so that I know what I'm working with and I don't have to do a lot of work later. So I'm just going to collect the colors for my red apple so that I'm ready to paint with the paper. Ooh. All right, I have my apple swatches ready to go. Remember, I can't just plop a bunch of things on here at this size. That's not going to really give me that painted quality that I want. So instead, I'm going to, as I'm working, I'm going to just keep making things smaller. Now, this one I do recommend using the Mod Podge technique for. I think that you're going to be able to just have a little bit more push and play. Now, the cool thing about this is you guys have already done a lot of overlapping technique with the gradient. So going on to the object is going to be easy peasy for you because you still have to work in that very overlapping fashion where you lay something down, you lay something over it. You might even go back and lay something over it again, and then again. So I'm just going to, of course, show you in fast forward, but I'm going to show you myself kind of going through hitting the shadows, hitting the midtones, hitting the highlights of my object, and just kind of playing around with the colors that I already have swatched here. Ta-da! Look at that delicious apple. You can just bite into it. Woo-woo! Time for the very last technique, which I think you guys will have a lot of fun with, is the surreal. You can do surreal this way, you can do it this way, whatever floats your boat. My examples here, you're basically going to be putting two opposite things together or just things together that don't make sense. You look at it and you question, could this be real? I don't think it's real. But what makes you question it is it is real things. Like, for instance, my little girl here, she is an artist and she is holding something, but she would not be holding this huge, ginormous paint palette that is triple her size almost, okay? So you use real things to make surreal images. So I just have a little collection here of oddities that I found in my magazine. You really can use anything. You can just go crazy with this one, guys. I don't think it requires a lot of explanation because kids love it. One thing that it does require, though, is very careful cutting. So unlike in these other ones where we were just cutting squares and rectangles, we were cutting triangles, we were even just cutting some very small squares, triangles, kind of curved shapes I did for that apple. When you're cutting something surreal, in order to make it look really like it could be real and trick your mind a little bit, you have to do good cutting. So when you look closely, I got right up into the edge with all this cutting that I did on my surreal images here. Otherwise, it's not going to look like it could be a realistic fake out, sort of. So when you are choosing your objects, you want to make sure that you are getting extremely, extremely close to what you are cutting. I just cut off an ear, but that's okay. I'm going to make it surreal. It's fine. It's fine. Now, some areas, like I'm not going to go inside of that elephant tail. That's kind of crazy. But I am going to make sure to go really careful around my elephants. What are those, the feet called on elephants? I don't know. Just feet, elephant feet. He kind of looks like he's giving a high five, so I sort of think that I could, you know, have a little bit of fun with that. With somebody, also looks like he could be holding something. So I'm just going to do a little bit of cutting on some things that I think could be funny together. So, all right, so I sort of have a nice collection of odd things that I can play with. Now, these might not necessarily look like they go together, but there's some things that I can do. So, for instance, if I want to have this teacher who is, you know, a very nice teacher teaching her students on these wiggly seats, I want to have her holding a viewfinder instead because she's not a geography teacher, she's an art teacher. But I want to have her this ginormous hand. This doesn't exactly fit, so this wouldn't be as believable, so I have to do some trimming. So I need to make the connection where the hand goes a little bit tinier to match up with the wrist that is on here. Now, I don't like that image right there because, hello, her face is blocked. So I might have to play around with the way that she's holding it and different types of things. Maybe that, there we go. So that looks really odd, but you know, she has a big hand like the Hulk. So that could potentially be one of my things. And then I found this cool cosplay wig that only was partly showing. And I have this cool elephant that's giving it, you know, giving out a paw high five. And because I cut this so carefully, I can actually play around with a little bit with overlapping. And I can give my elephant a little bit of a wig, a little bit of a makeover, if you will. And why stop there? Because my elephant likes to paint. This is too big of a paintbrush for its little hands. So I'm gonna do a little bit of trimming and do a little bit of, we call it foreshortening, when something goes from big to small really quickly in space, so that he has a paintbrush that fits his hand. Oh, looky there. Okay? Very odd, very strange. We want you guys to have fun with it. It's really simple when you work on stuff, or when you glue stuff down. Just make sure that you're gluing in the order that makes sense. So I need to glue this hair down first for my elephant, but I'm going to make sure to leave this little part up right here. Then putting glue over where I know my elephant is going to go. I'm going to just put the head where I think the hair will look best. A little bang action here. Oh no, I messed up, actually. Whoops. Look, Gotta work quick, Miss Braun. Okay. Whew, that was close. I wanted the bangs behind. I forgot. Okay. Whew, crisis averted. It's okay. All right, and then just like I said, just anything that you want to add, have fun with it, be crazy with it. We do ask that you're appropriate with it, though, please, okay? You are going to be turning this in. You are doing these things, turning them on a school device. So make sure that you're doing things that are appropriate, that aren't offensive to any type of person. But we encourage you guys to have fun with it, to be creative, to use your imagination. We'll show you some ones that we did a few years ago that students did that are just, you know, super hilarious. So have fun with this surreal, and then you're done. You've done all 4 collage techniques. Congratulations and wonderful job.